Welcome to this edition of Futurartist Records Presents. I've got with me in the studio today a local artist who deals with many aspects of his craft. He's a session musician, he's a performer, and he's also a teacher. Futurartist Records presents Jon Powers. Thanks, Jon, for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Yeah, you bet. We spoke for a long time the other day, and you had some great stories, you've had some great experiences. Why don't we just start with you at the very beginning? How did you get involved? What did you play? And we'll just kind of do an arc, and I'll just interject once more.
Sure, sounds good. I come from a musical family.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, you know my mom, you know my brother.
Yeah.
My mom plays piano and has been a vocal teacher and a band teacher, and so that was kind of the water that I grew up swimming in.
Yeah.
My brother is a singer and a guitarist. Both of them have written songs. I mean, there was just music pretty much everywhere, all around. I started taking drum lessons when I was 6. I don't really remember when I started taking piano lessons. I think I've tried piano on about, 3 different occasions where I've been like, okay, I'm going to learn how to play this thing. And it's just, it just never takes.
Right.
I don't know why.
The drumming is definitely taken.
Well, it's held on.
Yeah.
It's held on. It's been mesmerizing.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's where I started and played in all the different school bands and played in church and played with the family at home. Pretty much any situation that I could get into, I would.
Cool.
I always try and play.
Yeah. We had talked about the difference between your first gig and your first paying gig.
Ah, yeah.
And we had also talked about your involvement with playing in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you kind of talk about how you view a gig versus, playing with people as just being that part of your role?
Yeah. I mean, I've always felt like a gig was for money.
Okay.
I mean, essentially, that was to me work. But that's not where I started. I started by playing not only in school but at church, and I think what you're getting at there is that with the church playing, I would that was a part of my community.
Right.
That was a role that I was playing in the community. It was I believed and I participated, and so that was different. It didn't feel like performance.
Okay.
And it didn't feel like it was just my part.
Do you think as a performer, generally speaking, it's important to have something that you give with your craft that you don't expect a payment from to kind of get involved with community and share your gift, but also draw people in?
I don't know if I've ever even really thought about that. I think that's the honest answer. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever thought about it.
You've done a lot of that kind of work, playing with your churches, but also
Sure.
also doing the paying gig thing.
Sure. I think if I had to try and nail it down, I'd just say that more than anything, I've just followed my intuition, and if I believed I was supposed to do something, then I would do it.
Yeah.
And I really wouldn't. I guess money has never been the most important thing for me. I mean, I'm a musician, right? So.
Right. Well, yeah. You can't make that a priority and make it work, right?
Right. I mean, that's something that comes or it doesn't.
I don't ask a lot of bands that, but you have to wonder sometimes what is motivation for people to play outside of a gig that's going to pay, because you invest so much time and effort into your craft.
Well, and I think maybe another angle on that is that for whatever reason with musicians, I think in the culture there's a certain expectation that musicians will play for free or for very little because they want to be seen or they want a chance to be in front of an audience or that sort of thing. There's quite a few other professions that you wouldn't ask them to do that.
Right,
that you would pay them for their skill and you would pay them for their time invested, and you wouldn't ask them to come do something for you. I'm not really sure why it's that way in our culture. It seems to be a pretty common discussion among musicians.
Yeah.
I think that's partly why base rates for musicians for pay hasn't changed much since 1980. Sticky subject.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's tough because there's so many bands out there that are trying to make it work and that want to be seen, and I think part of the culture knows that.
Totally.
And so, they take advantage of that, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we headed in a completely different direction. That's awesome. I like it. Now, so you played through high school. You actually went to college for drumming.
Yeah, for jazz drumming.
Yeah.
I was a jazz studies major at University of Denver.
And you did 1 year.
I did 1 year.
What caused you to just do the 1 year, and how did you come out of that experience as a drummer? Do you feel like you got what you needed out of that year?
This is something that I've thought about and sort of revisited a number of times. The story that I told myself for a number of years was that I heard somebody say along the way that if you want to play, you got to play.
Right.
So that was kind of the thing that I was saying. Well, I'm not really playing a lot. I'm spending a lot of time doing academics, and I'm sitting in classrooms a lot, and I'm learning to play a lot of music that I'm not particularly interested in. As time has passed, and I guess I've tried to be more honest with myself and that sort of thing, I think a good deal of the reason that I left was that I felt like a big fish in a small pond in the town that I grew up in.
Right.
And I had a lot of opportunities to play, and I really, really enjoyed the things that I was able to do. We were talking about David Hebert earlier, and he and I had a jazz group for a couple of years that was a blast. We had a jam session at my house every week with all kinds of other musicians in town. David was the first one to take me to places like Round Midnight and Boulder, where we'd go in to the jam sessions, and we'd play with all the jazz, the real live jazz players, and we learned that, we learned the skill that way.
Do you feel like you learned more doing that than in the classroom? Or is it just a different type of learning?
Yeah, I think it's a different learning. And so some of it was confusion. Like I had a certain picture in my mind of how college was going to be, and how easy is that, right? To go in with expectation, and then it's not what you think it is, and it's hard for me sometimes to make those adjustments when something's different than I expect.
Absolutely. I think that's normal, especially in the music scene, because your expectation is what you go to the record store and buy many times, and you don't think about all the things that go in before that, or all the transitions that are made.
Right.
And so you come out going, I'm going to perform and be a star.
Right.
So that brings us to right around 94. You took a break from music.
I felt like it was a pretty daunting situation, and I don't think I believed in myself enough to really push through it. So I kind of took the easy way out. The girl that I was dating at the time her and her family were moving to Portland, Oregon. I didn't want to break that relationship up, and I was also kind of looking for this way out of this.
Right.
And so I went with them, and my drum sat in a corner for a year, and I think I played a drum set once walking into a music store.
Right.
Other than that, I didn't play at all. I didn't get away from music.
Well, we had mentioned that just before the show, how when you're a musician, you can put it on the back burner, but it never really goes away, and you always kind of end up returning to it. So you took a year off, you're in Portland.
Yeah.
When you came back to it, did you come back to it while you were out there, or did you end up coming back to it and coming home, so to speak?
As a player, coming home after moving back to Denver. While I was there, I think I spent more time in record stores than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Maybe besides work. So I was learning all kinds of stuff, chasing down all different sorts of records. And
so that's an education in itself almost.
Yeah.
So when you came back, did it affect the way you played?
I certainly had a lot more under my belt in terms of reference points and possibilities. And,
right.
So that was great.
Yeah. Who are some of your influences?
In general, or from that time period?
Wow, that's a good question, because it changes, doesn't it?
Right.
I would say in general, because it is constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
Are there some that have stood out and just kind of always been there?
Yeah, I think if I looked at it chronologically, I grew up in a Christian home, and the music that was played around was the Christian contemporary music that came out of Nashville. And I still never looked up the pronunciation of his last name. I told you I was going to do that.
Oh,
And I didn't.
yeah.
I think his last name is Leem. Paul Leem
Okay.
was the drummer on tons of that stuff. I mean, he was like one of the Nashville guys. So he was playing on the Christian contemporary stuff, but he was also playing on a lot of the country stuff. And he was doing television work, so he was playing for things like the Dukes of Hazzard soundtrack. And he was doing movie soundtracks, so Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, was another one.
Wow.
So he had a huge influence on me, and an exceptional drummer. That was, again, you know, like the water I was swimming in.
Right, right.
From there, it was the church that, at the church that I grew up, the drummer that I listened to and watched for years was a guy who still lives locally. His name's Ian Bodley. And, you know, people like to talk about their famous influences, and it is fun to say that. But, I mean, I watched this guy play 2 or 3 times a week, year after year after year, when I was a kid. And you know how much of a sponge you are when you're a kid. So formative. And I still watch a video of myself or see a picture of myself and can pick out movements that are exactly the same that I learned, that I know I just mimicked from him.
Yeah.
Certain licks that he would play or certain approach that he would take. And yet I still listen to his playing, and it still is captivating and just sucks me right in.
Yeah.
So he was a huge influence. Outside of that, then I kind of went into the learning about drummers.
Gotcha.
Learning the craft.
Right.
So Buddy Rich was a huge one. Larry Mullen Jr. from U2 was a big one, because they were kind of like my first band, personally.
Yeah.
Will Calhoun from Living Colour was a big influence. And then I really hit the jazz stride. I still had some of the rocks kind of going on the side, you know, like Neil Peart, Moving Pictures. That was the first CD I ever bought. But I really dove into the jazz tradition and started listening to Max Roach and Elvin Jones and Philly Joe Jones and Roy Haynes and Jimmy Cobb, and I mean, just like really dug in.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that you pull from all of those folks when you play?
Or
do you listen to some and go, that's not kind of where I sit?
I think all that stuff comes out. I think for me, one of the greatest compliments that I ever had was from this drummer. I was on a tour through Canada, and we were touring with this artist named Milo, and I can't remember where he's from. I want to say the Netherlands or Belgium, but I'm not sure. And his drummer, I think it was the only thing we ever really said to each other on the whole tour. He came up to me one time and he said that my playing reminded him of a cross between Questlove and Roy Haynes. And it was like, wow, somebody got it. Somebody got like what I was going for.
Right.
So I think it's a cross between, some of it just comes out naturally, but there is some of it that's intentional as well. Like I'm trying to use.
Right.
What kind of sound am I trying to shape?
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes sense. But I think a lot of times listeners don't think about that part of it.
Right.
So I mean, that's cool. Yeah, that's a huge compliment.
Like an artist picking their palette.
Yeah.
And saying, all right, this is what I'm going to try. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. We spoke the other day about how when you came back, you kind of settled into a regular job, started a family. Mm-hmm. Did you play during that period?
I did. I played at church, and I was a youth leader for the church.
Okay.
And I ended up leading the youth band. My brother was in that band. I got married during that time, and so my brother-in-law was in that band.
Oh, wow.
And
going back to that family situation.
Right. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. It was actually more than fun. It was probably one of the most meaningful times that I had in music, just because of how much the belief is entitled or wrapped up into it, and feeling like I was playing for a greater purpose than just trying to make money or trying to make innovative music. You know, it was more than that, and so that was really special to me, and to be able to do it with my brother and my brother-in-law was a pretty big gift.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law and I went on to form a band, and that is how Ben Hall,
Oh, okay.
your brother-in-law, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Came in, and we asked him to come in and play
Yeah.
with us, and he was amazing.
Yeah, he's a good bass player.
Yeah, to say the least.
That's so funny. We didn't mention that the other day, and all these, how everything is connected. That's great. That's the music scene, right?
Yeah, that's
I mean, it really is. It's networked. Now, did that bring you to the confidence and the desire to get back into performing at a different level? And this is leading me into your audition story that takes us into a whole nother world.
Right. So what happened in that time frame? I don't know what that would have been, 2003 to 2009-ish. At some point in there, I felt like I had seen enough of other types of jobs. I'd worked in a lot of different kinds of situations. I had a family. I asked myself, what would happen if I gave this my best shot? If I really, how good could I be?
Right.
If I really tried. So that's what I did. I kind of looked at my life, and I looked at the parameters that I had, and thought, well, how can I fulfill the responsibilities that I need to fulfill, and how can I fit drumming into it as much as possible and get better at my craft? And so I started practicing on all my lunch breaks and on all my downtime at work. I started transcribing songs and writing. I wrote a drum curriculum to teach from, because teaching is something that I had always done, really, well, not always, but off and on, since high school.
Oh, okay.
So that was something that was always kind of a running along the side there.
You know, when we spoke the other day, you had talked about, you know, you settled into a job situation, family situation, you were still playing, and then you came across an ad to audition.
Yeah. Okay, so leading up to that, I think, I made a personal decision. I was going to see how good I could get. So that's kind of what focused me to see where I could get in the musical world.
Okay.
In 2009, I saw an ad on a Denver message board online, pretty randomly, and it was an audition for a singer-songwriter named Matt Morris, who was based in Denver, and he was looking for a touring band. And I didn't really look into it a whole lot at the time. My rationale for going and trying it was that as a teacher, I wanted to be able to prepare my students for what it might be like to go through an audition situation.
Right.
So I thought, well, I need the experience, and I'll just go give it a shot. We'll see what happens. Went through the audition, and kind of like had this slow dawning on me of the situation, and you know what the possibility and the potential was.
Yeah.
They called me back, within the next few days, I think, and said, we'd love to have you join. And so then they started to lay out the specifics. Matt was a former Disney Mouseketeer, and so when he was 10, 11 years old, right in that area, he was performing on the Disney show with people like Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, I think Ryan Gosling.
Wow.
I mean, pretty influential, what turned out to be a pretty influential layer of entertainers and performers for their generation. His dad was a country pop crossover artist. His name's Gary Morris. And Justin asked Matt to be the first signer to his record label. And
this is the first project that you were getting involved in with Matt.
Right. Right.
That's a pretty big step.
Right. It was a big step. It was surreal.
Yeah.
So they said, well, we can't pay you for rehearsals. The goal is we have the connections and we know the people to get the band ready, and within the year we're going to do a national level rollout and really go for it and see what Matt's career could do. Matt is an amazing singer. He's probably the best singer that I've ever heard in person. I mean, his talent and technique also, but his ability to read the moment and just flow still is mesmerizing. I remember on songs that I wouldn't play, I would just go out into the audience and just listen. I mean, it was like,
Nice.
this just is not going to get better than this, so I'm going to make sure I'm out there.
Yeah.
And he's a great songwriter. So even at that time, he had songs that were recorded by Christina Aguilera and Justin Timberlake and Kelly Clarkson and Reba McEntire. I mean, so for me, it was like, what an opportunity. I'm living in Longmont, Colorado. Yeah. This guy wants to hire a Denver-based band because he lives here. He's got a high value for family. He's connected, like family and friends. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I knew it. I knew it. If there was going to be a career shot for me, then this was going to be it. So yeah, they offered me the opportunity, and I took it. Yeah. And we did that for about 2.5 years.
So what all was involved with that? You know, when you talk about national rollout, you talk about being a first artist on a new label that's part of, you know, a fairly well-known artist, Justin Timberlake. What experiences did that lead into for you?
So yeah, so we started by doing a little bit of studio work, and which actually, that was the first gig or whatever that I got hired for, was to come in and play. And they didn't keep anything I did, and we were in there for like 8 hours. Wow. I was terrified when I walked out. I thought I'd lost the gig the first day that I actually had the gig.
Short career.
Right. I mean, I was for sure. And really, a lot of it had to do with, I struggled playing with a metronome.
Interesting.
And it was something that I'd just not made a big enough part of my focus on all those years. Yeah. And music has changed so much. I mean, now most of the live work that I do is playing with a metronome. Yeah. I mean, that's just part of the business. Anyways, where that led was we did some local stuff to sort of prepare and build some band chemistry and that sort of thing. And I think the first national level thing, we went down and did the Austin City Limits Music Festival, a 3-day festival. It was great. I don't know, should I tell my Dave Grohl story?
Sure.
So, you know, as an artist, we had access to backstage, and we were hanging out. Dave Grohl was playing that night with Them Crooked Vultures. So John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, isn't it? Right? Wow. It was unreal. And so I went into one of the restrooms there, and Dave walked in right next to me. And so we're both going to the bathroom, and I'm like, I don't know, I can't really say hi. I can't really reach my hand over the stall, shake his hand. I mean, I don't even know what to do, and I'm just sitting there, and then he leaves, and it's all gone. Right, like that's how close I got.
You never know, right?
You never know. Well, he never knew.
Right. That's probably for the best.
Maybe. Funny. So anyways, beyond that then, the national rollout really looked like, how are they going to expose Matt to the national audience? Right. So they secured a deal to perform on Late Night with David Letterman. And this wasn't too long before he left. I mean, it was beginning of 2010. I don't remember what year he left, but there wasn't that much longer that he was on the air. That was my first time to New York. the next gig that we had, it was a morning show. I think it was CBS morning show. I can't quite remember. And then we flew to LA and did the Ellen DeGeneres show and did some local stuff there. And the benefit is that because we were on Justin's label, of course he could come out and sing and play with us. And that helped him boost the artist.
Yes. Yeah.
And also gave us all an opportunity. And as a result, we ended up playing with a lot of players that were in his band.
Oh, cool.
And that was amazing.
Yeah, I watched a snippet of one of those performances. I know that this is the way it works, but it was kind of funny to see and know the backstory. See, you're back there, you're doing your thing, and there's Matt in front, and knowing the backstory that, okay, he's just starting his career on this label, and there's Justin being his backup vocalist.
Right.
You know, I thought that was really interesting.
Right.
Oh, there's Justin Timberlake. He's his backup vocalist.
Right.
You know, I thought that was really interesting.
Right. I think that speaks to the friendship between them as well.
Yes.
That they were really willing to support each other, and they worked amazingly well. I mean, I think probably still maybe the most, maybe the mountaintop musical moment of my life was rehearsing for a performance with Justin and Matt and Charlie, and then a guitarist from Denver named Dave Preston. It was the 5 of us, and we played 2 or 3 songs for about 4.5 hours. We would just rotate one, and we finally threw one out and back and forth and narrowed it down. And I mean, those guys, their musicality, the way that they listened to each other and responded so quickly, the way they worked together, the unspoken respect and high degree of musicianship and artistry. It was a real privilege to be involved.
Yeah.
And 4.5 hours went like that.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Be involved with something like that. Yeah. Now, I'm going to come back to this question again later under another situation, but we had talked, and we don't want to up or down anyone, but we had talked about the difference between New York and the Letterman show and LA and the Ellen show.
Oh, yeah.
With approach and setup and all of that stuff. Is that something you can speak to a little bit? Yeah.
I mean, it was just my experience at the time, so
Sure.
I mean, and I don't know if some of it is even, New York versus LA and just general approaches to things. But New York, we got there really early in the morning. It was January. It was freezing outside. It was freezing inside the studio.
And aren't they all, doesn't it seem like almost all studios are freezing?
In my experience, it's more common than not.
It is.
For sure. And we were there a long time. Small hallways, old carpet. It was really specific instructions about how you interact with Dave. And the band wasn't, like they were in and out really quick, I'm sure. I mean, they're session players, so they're just churning through their gigs. Got to LA, walked into the Ellen. It's huge. Everything's new. There's vending machines all around, ping pong tables. She walks up, gives you a big hug. Thank you for being on the show. And it was just, I mean, there's a lot more differences than just New York and LA, obviously.
Right.
There's the people and their approaches and the audiences that they attract.
Right.
But yeah, that was pretty interesting to see 1 week apart.
Yeah, it's not something you can really prepare for, is it?
No.
You go, oh, so this is what it's like, and then you go to the Ellen show, and it's like, oh, that's not anything like I had, a week ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do want to touch on some of those comparisons.
Sure.
Again, because the next thing that happens, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of the next thing that happens in this journey is Haiti ends up going through a massive natural disaster. And you get involved with another stratospheric level of entertainers,
right,
and being part of the Hope for Haiti project.
Yeah. So the Hope for Haiti Now telethon, I believe, was organized by George Clooney. I'm not sure about how all that worked, but that's kind of how I understood it at the time. And he called on a select group of entertainers. They filmed both in LA and New York. And the goal was to sing songs that all the proceeds would go directly towards helping the disaster relief effort.
Yeah.
It was released on iTunes as digital only, so there are no hard copies made. In rehearsals, we narrowed it down to, I shouldn't say we, I mean, it was really Justin that narrowed it down because he was the one who was invited to play. We happened to be in town for all the other performances. And so we were doing a kind of a split rehearsal, getting ready for Ellen's show, and also then this came up last minute. And I honestly don't know what Justin had in mind, but we all ended up there. You know, the guitarist was Charlie Sexton, who was Bob Dylan's touring guitarist, and a major producer and player in Austin. And so we do the rehearsal. We get to, I think it's ABC. It's the room where they do Dancing with the Stars, and find our parking spot. Get out of the car. We're walking towards, and this is a really small event. Like they invited the artists, and then even limited the number of entourage that they could have. So it was something like 1 or 2 people that each artist could have, which is pretty small considering. So the ratio of stars to non-stars, actually there's a lot more stars than non-stars walking around the facility. So to give you an example of what it felt like, walking in, I looked over and Adam Sandler and Chris Rock are walking in together. And just walking through the parking lot, you know, they just got out of the car. Okay, all right, like, okay. Get up to check in, and Stevie Wonder's at the desk checking in. He's tall.
Is he?
He is. I had no idea. Got into the lobby, and Taylor Swift gets off the elevator and walks by. Get up to our room, and it's between Keith Urban and John Legend. And, you know, you can hear John Legend warming up in the background. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And we walk down, and Taylor Swift's band's stuff is set up on the stage, and off to the side they have a piano, and John Cusack and Drew Barrymore are over there chatting with Justin, and he eventually comes over, and we play, and we get done, and walking out, Tom Hanks is there having a conversation. You know, it was just like, so this was the most bizarre part about it, is that it all felt very familiar. I mean, these are people that we've all seen so many times. So you're just walking through like, oh, this is really comfortable. I mean, I know all these people. Clicks. I don't know any of these people. You know, it's really.
Yeah. Well, that brings me back to the difference in the two shows and the approach that Ellen had. And you had mentioned how real Justin was in working with him, and the respect that you got from him, and all of that. And then you mentioned the familiarity of being on the set with all these big stars.
Yeah.
Did it feel to you like you were just one of the guys? Or were you, he's just here for the session and it doesn't really matter? Or, you know, how did that, because you say it felt familiar because you were aware who of all of them were, but did it feel like you were absorbed into the project, that everybody was really part of it?
I wish I could say that I felt like one of the guys. I think if that had happened, my music career would have gone much differently. I was acutely aware of the difference between their lives and my own. I was acutely aware of where I was in the sort of process. The other, I guess one of the other things that I realized rolling into LA in those circumstances was that it's a music business town. And it like clicked for me in a way. You know, they always say you got to move to New York or LA or Austin or something if you want to make it, Nashville. But it clicked, like, this is where the industry is. So that's why all these people are here. That's why they've made sacrifices, and that's where the connections are made. And so in that regard, I did feel like I was a part of it. Like, oh, I get it. This is,
Right.
like, I felt in a large degree like this is where I should be. And that was kind of a double-edged sword. I wanted to be there, and and I knew I couldn't. I mean, I had a family, I had responsibilities, and I didn't have a responsible way to bring them there.
Right.
But on the other hand, it was very validating to realize that this life that I'd been working hard for a long time and dreaming about since I was a kid, that I was like, I saw it and I felt like I belonged in that arena.
Yeah, yeah. Did you feel respected and accepted by all the stars that were working on the project? Like,
oh yeah,
you know, you're part of this. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And all that.
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, when we came down from the dressing room, one of the first things that happened was George Clooney met us, and just very genuinely and humbly, he reaches out his hand, "Hi, I'm George." And, you know, it's like, yeah, I know you're George. I'm Jon.
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
Justin was guarded at first, and I can't say that I blame him.
Sure.
Once he kind of got a feel for who I was, who the other band got, it was, you know, high fives, "Hey man, how's it going? Excited for the show." And while he was focused and in business mode, he was also really enjoying it. I mean,
So he likes what he does.
oh,
That's got to be
I think he
really nice
loved
to
it.
see. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't punching the clock. It wasn't
Yeah.
distraction. It wasn't attitude. He wasn't self-centered. I
Right.
mean, it was great.
That's cool, especially for the experiences that you've gone through, to know that those are real people.
Yeah.
You know, it could have gone very differently, and you could have run into someone who, you know,
Yeah.
didn't treat you with any respect at
Same
all.
thing
So that's
with
great.
Yeah, same thing with Ellen, right? It was
Yeah.
they just, it seems like a lot of the people that I ended up interacting with have a good handle on the fact that we're all people. And there's a basic
Yeah.
level of human respect that they were giving everyone, and then allowed everybody to operate in.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It
kinda
helps
got the-
things work better.
Right.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you this a little farther down the road, but I think it works appropriately now, and that is, did you take seeing that and seeing them treat you that way, do you take that home with you? And the way you work with people in your projects now, or has that never been an issue? You know, seeing everybody as, you know, not I've got more experience or I'm a
Right.
better player, but that we're working on something.
Well, I'd like to say, I mean, I hope I could say that I've always been able to operate that way, that I've tried to show up and give my best shot and be respectful to the people and the artists I work with. And so I don't know that it, I think to me it just spoke more of their character, that they
okay.
could have that much access and they could sort of live above the law,
Right,
so to speak.
right.
And yet they didn't. They,
Yeah.
that did mean a lot to me.
It's probably kind of refreshing too after some of the stories you can hear about artists,
Right.
you know.
Right. I did see a few.
Yeah. So that Hope for Haiti, I think it raised somewhere between $50 and $60 million, had over 83 million views. That's a pretty good project to have on your resume.
Right. It was, I wouldn't let anybody talk to me about it before we went on. I was like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to
Yeah.
hear how many, what cable outlets we're going to be on. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Right, it's
I
too
don't-
much.
You know, it's just like,
Focus so I can get through
yep,
it.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to play a song and then we can talk about it.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Which comes to what's your nerve level when you do things, and has it changed now that you've been through some of those experiences?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I used to suffer a pretty consistent bout of nerves every time getting on stage, and sometimes that didn't always turn out well.
Right.
After going through that sort of level of performing, it's allowed me to put things in perspective better. Not that I don't have nerves still, and sometimes they just take over.
Yeah.
It seems to be more like what kind of day I'm having and how well I can sort of rein myself in. But yeah, there is a perspective difference between, okay, I'm playing on international television and I'm playing in a coffee house for 45 people.
Right. Right.
And so that helps a lot. Like, okay, helps me get present and
Sure.
like be present. Okay, so I'm just playing for these 45 people. Let me do my best to create an experience that makes a difference and matters for everybody right now.
Mm. You never know what to expect in something like that, do you?
Yeah.
You know how you're going to respond to a small room after you've been on a bigger stage.
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. I probably spent the next 3 years depressed. I mean, it was, we talked a little bit about this, that
Yeah.
when you choose to make a passion your profession and then it doesn't pan out, I think it's more like heartbreak than it is
Yeah.
like just losing a job. I mean,
Right.
there's more to it than that. And I didn't even really process it that way for quite a while. It took some distance
Yeah.
to see. I mean, I really struggled. And I did everything in my power to hang on to it and to try and ride the wave. But
Yeah.
I think deep down I sort of knew that was the crest. You know?
Right. It's a pretty good crest to have, I would
Yes,
say.
I'm grateful.
That brings us up to not too long ago, and I guess that depends on who you talk to as far as time goes.
Yeah.
But in this whole process, at the same time, streaming came in
Yeah.
and really altered the industry. So tell us a little bit about what impact that had on you and the projects that you were part of.
Well, Matt Morris was touring, and in that time period, Justin's label had worked out a deal with Interscope Records, and so Interscope became the main distributor, and we already recorded a record. I don't know, we probably got 80% of the way done with the second record, and we're getting some pretty good feedback, and we were really excited about it. And then Interscope, because of the streaming issues, ended up doing what a lot of labels did, and that is dumping, 2/3 of their rosters, and focusing on the people who were either currently making them a lot of money or who they thought could make them a lot of money quickly. So pretty much all that artist and development, anybody in there just was gone.
Was gone.
Matt's record and just didn't perform well nationally, while the performances were amazing. I mean,
Right.
one of the performances that we did in Montreal, we played a 45-minute opening set, and we sold 100 CDs after and had to stop so that we had more for the rest of the tour.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was like he was that good of a performer.
Wow.
It was amazing, and the potential.
Right. Well, yeah, and that people know that there was an impact,
Oh yeah.
but to be part of that and see it happening, and know that you were working on something that had that potential and it was still cut loose.
Yeah.
I did a little homework, and Interscope is also the label that you two happen to be on.
I did not know that.
So
is it like a division?
And that's what I'm wondering,
Okay.
or maybe it just depended on the album. But I thought that was one of your influences,
That's
and
funny.
there you were for
Wow.
part of the family.
That's a
It's kind of cool,
bittersweet circle.
right? Right. All of this happened, and it brings you to a different kind of performance. And now you're performing with some local bands. One of them is with your brother, off and on, Mountain City.
Yeah, that was something I helped him start Mountain City,
Okay.
and they've since focused on the duet.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I couldn't continue to do. But yeah, it was great to be a part of helping them get off the ground. And,
Yeah.
so that's one. I also play with Charlotte Sass. She's a Denver-based pop jazz singer-songwriter. I've played with Danielle Ate the Sandwich off and on over the years, and she's an amazing talent. And then bits and not bits and pieces, but a variety of different artists here and there, mostly just as fill-in.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that harder than being with a band that is working on stuff all the time? Or is it easier because you don't have to be as committed to a long term? How does that work?
Yeah. It's hard to be in a band, especially if it's an original band, if you're trying to make a living.
Right. Right.
I have been really fortunate to be able to be a part of a lot of projects that were making original music, but I still was able to get paid.
Ah, gotcha.
And I feel really fortunate to be in that situation. I haven't had to do a ton of cover bands. And,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now that, something that you mentioned early on, and this has been going on through all of this, but it's something you've kind of come back around to, is that you're focusing more on teaching now.
Right.
I think you said it's the majority of what you do now is teach. How have these experiences affected the way you teach? I know we spoke a little bit about how you would have taught compared to how you teach now, because of some of the things that you've gone through and some of the things that you've experienced.
Yeah.
And what do you teach? Do you teach only beginners? Do you teach,
I teach primarily drum set and percussion lessons to beginners all the way through what I would call intermediate players. When we start getting into more advanced concepts, then it just turns into more of a dialogue. And
oh, okay.
I don't know that I've ascended to really being able to talk much or very in depth about that sort of thing. So mostly what the students that I have are kids who want to learn how to play drums, who are maybe going into their band programs or want to play for their church or have a band that they want to play with with their friends. And also there's a significant number of people who have it on their bucket list and they want to make sure that they gave it a shot, that they can say, so whether, it's somebody in their 30s or 40s or 50s or even 60s, and they say, so that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I also teach beginners of a variety of band instruments at Longmont Christian School right now with Bill Wilkinson, which is another one of those people that talk about the network, the music network, right?
Yeah.
And so that's been really eye-opening to go in and sit there with a clarinetist and help them work out fingerings and note reading and being patient and how to practice. And so some of that's
interesting.
Yeah. That's been a really great experience. But to your question of how has my past sort of influenced my current teaching, I was not a patient teacher for at least the first half of my teaching career. I started giving lessons to my good friend Doug Carmichael, and we would get into conversations about, because he's a music teacher as well, we would get into conversations about the best way to impact people. And we talked about kind of the old school way where, the teachers would stand with the ruler and, you'd make a wrong note, smack, to whatever degree, whether that was verbal or feeling or whatever. But now it's much different. It's really about making sure that someone has fun and they're enjoying it first, and then once they're hooked, then they really can start to get not only the understanding, but they're motivated to chase down technique,
right,
and variety of styles that they may not naturally listen to, that sort of thing. So that radically changed how I taught. But also just going out and traveling and being in a lot of different situations and meeting a lot of different people, that's given me, I guess, more patience and more acceptance and just trying to allow people to be themselves.
Right. We had spoken the other day, and if you could speak to this just really briefly, is that made you understand things a little bit differently was some of the managers of these major label artists and how they dealt with things that came up, whether it be a traffic jam or a show that got dropped or whatever. And when you come home with that, seeing that, oh, everybody deals with this.
Yeah.
Suddenly your approach is different.
Yeah. So 2 people, Matt and his manager, Dottie Moore. Matt's approach to work was, we're just going to figure it out. There's a way. And every day something went different than you would expect it to go. And because of that, over and over, he would not quit. It was just, okay, well, let's just figure it out. And there wasn't wasted time and emotion. There wasn't, lashing out at people or pointing the finger. It was, all right, this is where we are. Now let's figure out how to get where we want to go.
Right.
And seeing him model that day after day was really impactful. His manager, they always said she would kill people with kindness. And so she would get into some difficult situations with some pretty extreme personalities, and always had a way of communicating her respect towards people and her ability to try and find something that worked for everyone, and did it in a very genuine way.
Yeah.
And so coming back, I think that both of those models have really impacted me and changed the way that I've not only dealt with business and dealt with the music business and students, but just life in general.
Right, right. Yeah, something you can take away that applies to everything.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I mean, even if that's all you got out of all of these experiences, that's huge, huge. Maybe more important than the other stuff. I mean,
I don't know if I'd go that far, Michael.
Hold on now, hold on. The fame part was pretty sweet.
That's right.
So what's next? Now you've written some instructional books. You've done a bunch of YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
You've done some transcribing. But what's next for you?
Well, right now, like you said, I focus primarily on teaching. I feel like the best use of my time and the best way that I can support my family. I've done some co-songwriting and co-production. That's been really enlightening and very hard.
Right.
Wow. And then playing still quite a bit. I play at a variety of churches up and down the Front Range almost every weekend.
Oh, cool.
Playing somewhere. So that's pretty much what life looks like today.
Okay. Thanks for coming down today, Jon.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This was cool. And you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks.
And I'm sure that we've got many more stories that we could talk about and share. So like, share, comment, subscribe to this program. Show these artists that you support what they're doing. It's so important. I'm Michael Hartsock. Thanks for watching Futurartist Records Presents.